For years, Jimmy Butler has been the face of Miami Heat basketball. He's a player whose passion, grit, and relentless drive made him the heart and soul of this franchise. From delivering clutch performances in the postseason and carrying the team to the NBA Finals multiple times, Jimmy gave everything that he had to this city. As I've said time and time again, he was synonymous with Heat culture and his impact was undeniable. But now, everything's changing, and moments like this from Jimmy will soon be a thing of the past.
2 seconds left. Butler, step back for the win. Yes! Jimmy Butler delivers the victory. 118-116.
It's almost unbelievable to think about where this team was when Jimmy Butler first arrived. At that moment in time, the Miami Heat were a franchise with little to no expectations. But from the moment that Butler would first step onto the court, he would immediately flip the script. With Butler, there would be so many times where the Heat would come close to achieving that ultimate goal of winning it all.
Fakes, fires, Butler, Heat can tie for the lead. Loose and Horford.
Perhaps I'm getting a little carried away, but let's be honest. Some truly unforgettable moments were made in Miami during Jimmy Butler's time there. And that's exactly why it's so unfortunate that this chapter is ending the way that it is. But hey, if you're enjoying the content, take a page out of Jimmy Butler's playbook and be proactive about your future. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you could make sure that you never miss the best basketball content out there. And speaking of taking control, if you want to put your NBA knowledge to work and potentially win big, check out today's sponsor, Underdog. Underdog brings all of your favorite fantasy sports features together in one place, and the app is super user-friendly. Whether you're a seasoned pro or complete beginner, you'll have no trouble jumping right in and getting started. Underdog's got massive prize pools, daily drafts, and a whole bunch of fun games to keep you locked in all year round. Whether it's football, basketball, or a quick pick'em like I'm doing right now, there's always something going on. If you haven't jumped on Underdog Fantasy yet, now is the perfect time. Use my code COOP to score up to $1,000 in bonus cash, plus a free pick to get you started. It's also a great way to support the channel. Thank you, Underdog, for the sponsor. Thursday night against the Indiana Pacers, Jimmy Butler delivered a performance that was hard to ignore for all of the wrong reasons. He finished with just 9 points, only took 6 shots, and posted a game low -27 in a game that Miami only lost by 13. Now we all know that Jimmy has had his fair share of off nights and that he's not one to exactly go all out during the regular season. But this game, there was something seriously off. Something that went beyond just the low point total. And that was his body language. It was genuinely concerning. This was only Jimmy's second game back after an illness that in his own words had him down for the count. It was also the second night of a back-to-back. But even with all of that in mind, his lack of energy and poor demeanor were still inexcusable. It was clear that he was sending a message. In fact, his body language was so telling, it immediately reminded me of Harden's infamous fat suit moment when he was trying to force his way out of Houston. And if his actions on the court weren't loud enough, his post-game press conference made everything crystal clear. Jimmy didn't hold anything back, removing any room for doubt about his current situation.
What do I want to see happen? I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop. And I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Jimmy might as well have pulled an Anthony Davis and wore a "That's All Folks" shirt to the game. AD, I still don't know what us Pelicans fans did to deserve that one, but I still have love for you and that controversial bubble championship that you won alongside LeBron James. Jimmy basically came out and said that right now playing basketball in Miami is joyless, that the joy that he had in Miami probably isn't returning, and that we'll find out where his joy can return very soon. Call me crazy, but man, this whole situation sort of feels like deja vu.
Is it fixable?
It could be. It could be. But do I think so? No. Because you got to be honest. I'm being honest. Do I think so? No, I'm being honest with you. But is everybody going to be honest? No. No, everybody's not going to be honest. Like if you go and say, which one of y'all told what Jimmy said today in practice? Everybody, no, I don't know. You gotta be honest. I don't care. There ain't nothing we can do about it.
I can't imagine that there was anyone happier to hear Jimmy go public with his frustration than Shams. For those who missed it, Shams had his credibility called into question by none other than Jimmy's own agent. It all started when Shams reported that Jimmy's agent had leaked some preferred destinations: Dallas, Houston, and Golden State. Jimmy's agent didn't hold back. Not only would he call the report complete BS, but he also made it clear that Shams usually isn't even worth acknowledging. Shortly after this, even Pat Riley came around and said that they weren't trading Jimmy Butler. Everything was stacking up against Shams, and it was kind of starting to look like he was lying. Admittedly, I had my doubts about this situation, but then I remembered that Shams is a beast, and also that sensitive information like that leaking with his agent's name attached to it, that could be detrimental on many different fronts, especially with all of the rules and regulations that the league has in place. So after Jimmy's fiasco of a press conference, Shams would drop a piece on ESPN about how Jimmy has indicated to the Miami Heat that he wants to be traded and is open to playing anywhere other than Miami. Sheesh, Jimmy, it's like that? I'll say this: be careful what you wish for, because it just might happen. Anywhere might really end up being anywhere. And yes, I am aware that Jimmy has a player option at the end of this season. I just know that Jimmy isn't trying to go anywhere though. Once you get past 35, even half of a season is precious time that you don't want to waste. In this ESPN piece, Shams would note that an issue that led to Butler's request was an implication from team officials that he hadn't played his hardest in a win against the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday. That game would also be another 9-point performance, but that's besides the point. The point is that according to this piece, this implication ticked Jimmy Butler off. He wanted out, and he was ready to make a scene about it, which this would tick Pat Riley and the Miami Heat off. It's really starting to feel like this is going to be one of those situations where there just aren't any winners. After Jimmy's post-game press conference that we were talking about earlier, Shams would report that the Miami Heat were suspending Jimmy Butler for 7 games for multiple instances of conduct detrimental to the team over the course of the season, and particularly the last several weeks. With the Miami Heat having enough of the Jimmy Butler show, they would go back on their words, with the Heat saying that through his actions and statements, he has shown that he no longer wants to be a part of this team. Jimmy Butler and his representative have indicated that they wish to be traded. Therefore, we will listen to offers. According to Bobby Marks, that suspension of Jimmy's will cost him $346,543 for each game missed. Over the course of 7 games, that's $2.35 million. Jimmy is going to have to sell a lot of Big Face coffee to recoup that value. Or maybe just a few, considering how much they cost. It's crazy how this situation has flipped from we aren't trading Jimmy Butler to him being suspended and the Heat trying to move him as fast as possible. With Jimmy having a player option for next season, it's going to be interesting to see what team trades for him and then opts to pay him, which you have to think that all of this could have been avoided if Jimmy just got his money in a reasonable fashion. According to that earlier ESPN piece, Jimmy was in part frustrated with the organization after they questioned his effort on the floor, but it's obvious that the way that contract negotiations have unfolded played the biggest role in all of this. Those keep your mouth shut if you're not out there playing comments from Pat Riley definitely didn't help the situation either, but it's clear what the real driving force behind all of this is. I don't blame the Heat for being hesitant to pay a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, especially with his injury history. He's still playing at a high level, but he also still is 35. What I do blame the Miami Heat for is not going all in with Jimmy Butler. We constantly heard the Heat's name linked to big name players, but they never got any of them. The way that this situation is played out is definitely not a good look for either the Miami Heat or Jimmy Butler. As Bam said, it's never a good sign when a player and an organization are at odds like this. However, the fact that this doesn't look great for Butler might actually work in his favor. The more his trade value drops, the cheaper he becomes for his next team to acquire. The cheaper that he becomes to acquire, the better that his next team is. Also, the bigger of a mess that he makes, the less likely that the Heat are going to be to want to play him after his suspension. Right now, it's being reported that they plan to play him if they can't trade him, which is probably posturing, but would be hilarious to see. Jimmy Butler has every reason to want to turn this thing into a mess, and the Miami Heat, they have every reason to want to resolve this thing as fast as possible. It's clear that this whole thing is a distraction that this team doesn't need. If you guys think that the Heat aren't getting distracted by this, then tell me why they just lost by 36 points to the Utah Jazz, who only had 7 wins coming into their matchup. This is a great time to bring up the fact that it's being reported that the Heat believe that they can still contend even with losing Jimmy Butler, and this is part of the reason that they want a win-now piece back in a Butler trade. I'm all for believing in yourself, but I'm starting to feel like we're erring on the side of delusion here. I really hope that loss to Utah humbled them, because while the Heat aren't a terrible team without Jimmy Butler, they're far from being a great one. This team going for win-now pieces in a Jimmy Butler trade would be a terrible mistake. If these reports about the Heat seeking win-now talent are true, then finding Jimmy's new home becomes that much more tricky, because most teams that are trying to win now probably aren't going to be trying to give away a whole bunch of win-now talent for Jimmy Butler unless they're desperate, which I don't think anybody is that desperate. Sitting outside of the play-in tournament with 3 stars, the Suns are desperate. And according to reports, Jimmy Butler has interest in joining the Suns. But the thing is that the Suns aren't desperate to trade Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. They've been so bad that this moment might be coming soon, but it hasn't happened yet. They're not trading them until they absolutely have to, meaning that they're going to be trying to give Miami Bradley Beal. Despite the Heat and Bradley Beal flirting together in the past, reports are saying that this ship has sailed and that the Heat currently have no interest in bringing in Bradley Beal as part of a Jimmy Butler trade. Man, who in the world gave Bradley Beal a no trade clause on that albatross of a contract that he has? In a trade, you couldn't even send this guy to a third team without him agreeing to it, as if moving that dollar figure on his contract wasn't already hard enough. Sorry, Jimmy, you getting traded to Phoenix isn't looking that good. You might have dyed your hair for nothing. Never say never though, because the Suns have been the most aggressive team in pursuing Jimmy Butler, with them wanting to give Jimmy a lucrative contract. I told you guys that they were desperate. As noted earlier, the Warriors have been linked to Jimmy too, but right now it's being reported that they're not a viable option for him. But again, everything in this situation is very fluid, and who may not seem like a match for Jimmy at one moment in time can easily become one in an instance. Desperation makes teams do crazy things, and regardless of what comes out and what is said, the Heat are desperate to trade Butler, and as we get closer to that trade deadline, there will be more teams who become desperate to shake things up. The Rockets might not fit the bill of a desperate team, but as I mentioned earlier, they do have interest in Butler. I could definitely see him ending up in Houston. Ideally, I'd like to see the Rockets pursue a younger star, but the prospect of Butler mentoring Jalen Green and helping guide this team towards becoming an elite contender is too appealing to overlook. If Jimmy wasn't just trying to get his money and mail it in, he could seriously help out that Houston Rockets ball club. Anyways guys, there's some more going on in the basketball world that I need to be covering, so let me know what you think about this whole situation. Who is in the right and who is in the wrong? What places make sense for Jimmy? And could you see a surprise team trading for Jimmy like the Denver Nuggets? I called them a surprise team like it's not being reported that them, the Pelicans, and the Spurs all have interest in Jimmy now. Jimmy, Jamal, and Jokic, that could be a problem for sure. That's one that would go either way. It'd be great and they'd win a championship, or it'd be terrible and they'd fall apart. There would be no in between. It's the type of high risk move that I love to watch from a distance. Clicking the video on the screen right now and using code COOP for Underdog are both great ways to support this channel. I'm GetLikeCoop, bringing you guys the scoop until our next upload.